From the headquarters of FtS English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo. This is From the South. Protesters gathered outside the Trump Tower on Monday night in New York ahead of the State of the Union address. Demonstrators say that they are ashamed by President Donald Trump's administration. Protesters held a banner saying, "Arrest Trump." They say his policies are hurting the country.
Trump acts as if he's above the law. He's done so many things that if it was an ordinary person, they would have been arrested a long time ago.
All of a sudden, I wake up with knots since 2000, since he got elected, in my stomach, and I still have the knots, but at least I can open my eyes and think, you know what? It's going to change. I mean, he's going to go down. It's just a matter of when and how much damage he does before that it happens.
Trump delivered his State of the Union address with the economy, border security, and foreign policy at the top of his agenda. He said that he will build the wall on the Mexican border in the name of national security. U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders responded to President Donald Trump's State of the Union address. Sanders refuted a number of the supposed achievements Trump highlighted in regards to economy and migration.
The economy is not booming when half of Americans 55 years of age and older have no idea how they will live out the last years of their lives with dignity, because they have no retirement savings. And that includes, unbelievably, 20% of seniors trying to survive on incomes of less than $14,000 a year. And I just don't know how anybody, certainly not a senior citizen, survives on $14,000 a year. Tonight, and over and over and over and over again, that building a wall on the Mexican border is a national emergency. In fact, he shut down the government and caused enormous pain and uncertainty for some 800,000 federal employees who were forced to go to work but were not paid, all because of his insistence on that wall.
Migration was one of the main topics Trump touched upon during his speech. This is what he had to say about the crisis hitting Central America.
As we speak, large, organized caravans are on the march to the United States. We have just heard that Mexican cities, in order to remove the illegal immigrants from their communities, are getting trucks and buses to bring them up to our country in areas where there is little border protection.
And congressional members reacted to the speech upon exit. Minnesota Democrat Ilhan Omar, who has been one of the few lawmakers who have spoken out against U.S. intervention in Venezuela, say it's hard to trust Trump and his lies.
I am. It's hard to trust someone who continuously lies and manipulates the American people. And I know that it is someone that even if we make attempts to work with, he'll do his own thing. But my hope is that if we stay together and continue to work on behalf of the American people, just like last time, we will make sure that he's not successful.
And the Empire Files host Abby Martin commented on Trump's speech and highlighted that the wall and deportations was also the Democrats' policy.
There is a wall that extends nearly the entire span of the southwestern U.S. border. Where there isn't a wall, there's treacherous mountainous terrain And there's a wall where people already don't think that there's a wall. The Democrats are going along with this policy because we know Bill Clinton in 1996 put that death by deterrence. They wanted to funnel migrants into the most death-defying routes so that they could die and use their deaths as somehow a deterrent to the rest of the people in Mexico and Latin America. This obviously doesn't work. There's thousands of migrants dying every year in the desert. The Democrats are pretending bizarrely that there is not a wall because they want to play this faux humanitarian angle opposition to Trump. Both think that people should be deported en masse.
President Trump also took a moment to say that socialism will never exist in the United States.
Here in the United States, we are alarmed by the new calls to adopt socialism in our country. America was founded on liberty and independence and not government coercion, domination, and control. Tonight, we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country.
Telesur also spoke with Vijay Prahsad, director of the Institute for Social Research Tricontinental. He pointed out how vague Trump was in more of the topics he touched, except for the attack against Venezuela and socialism, which was supported by Congress.
Well, it's interesting that, I've watched a few of these State of the Union addresses, and this one was long on lyricism and short on detail. You had Trump provide these almost Obama-esque flourishes. He was really at the level of, cliches, but there wasn't anything that you could sink your teeth into. I mean, he talked about Venezuela, but it was very brief. He mentioned North Korea, but even that was extraordinarily brief. And he mentioned China, where it was basically 2 lines. He seemed obsessed with the question of the border wall. That was where he put so much of his energy in. And strikingly, he felt the need, right after mentioning Venezuela, he felt the need to attack socialism. And what struck me was how the US Congress responded, with a almost rabid nationalism, chanting USA, USA. So for somebody who reports on foreign policy, it was rather curious to see how empty this speech was.
Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza was among the many people around the world who took to social media during the speech using the hashtags Trump hands off Venezuela and Trump lies, both of which were trending worldwide. He tweeted that while Trump criticizes socialism, he also embraces fascism. He also said that Trump can't overcome his imperial arrogance and continues to use the term legal alien. The minister went on to say, from Venezuela and all of Latin America, we replied, no one is illegal, no one is an alien. And during the speech, the foreign minister also expressed his support to the state of Palestine and its people who he says are fighting, resisting, and will prevail. Finally, the minister sent a message of support on behalf of Venezuela for the people and government of Iran who face sanctions and blockades, much like Venezuela. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. In a recent interview with RT, Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro has vowed not to betray his country, saying he won't give in to Washington's calls.
I do not care how I'm going to go down in history. I'm not going to be a traitor, a weak one, like a one who turned his back on his history commitments to his people.
President Maduro also said that Donald Trump is calling for a coup in Venezuela in order to get his hands on the country's vast natural resources.
I take advantage of every means of communication to ask the whole world to come forward to denounce and stop the madness of Donald Trump. Venezuela is never going to give in.
The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has expressed his support to the upcoming meeting in Montevideo on Venezuela. Guterres has always insisted that dialogue is the only way to find a solution to the political situation in Venezuela. The session, hosted by the European Union and the Uruguayan government, will be held on Thursday in Montevideo. 13 EU and Latin American countries will participate. Ecuadorian Foreign Minister José Valencia has confirmed that Ecuador will also join the meeting in Uruguay.
We must be clear and assertive about our position on Venezuela. The answer must be democratic. The Venezuelan people have to vote and decide at the polls. Transparent and open elections must be conducted by a transitional government, respecting human rights. Ecuador will be at the meeting. We were invited to join this group, which wants a prompt solution in Venezuela and exchanging points of view.
Earlier, we spoke to Alan Woods, a political activist and founder of Hands Off Venezuela. When we asked them about what's referred to as humanitarian aid, which the U.S. has pledged to Venezuela, this is what he had to say.
The United States were interested in helping the people of Venezuela in any sense, then they would certainly not have stolen billions of dollars from PDVSA, from the Venezuelan people. Oh, and I might add to that the British government also, the Bank of England, has quite shamelessly, this has not been reported in general, but it's a fact, has deliberately refused to hand over billions of dollars worth of Venezuelan gold, which is, again, is the property of the Venezuelan people. So this is sheer hypocrisy. And I would venture to say, I would venture to give the opinion that this so-called humanitarianism is merely a provocation designed to conceal an act of aggression and potentially military intervention, I would say.
Police forces in Argentina were seen using repressive tactics in an attempt to disperse a demonstration taking place in the capital. Hundreds of protesters marched to the U.S. Embassy. They rallied to oppose U.S. involvement in Venezuela and interventionist attempts. They also showed their support to Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro as the country's constitutional president.
Right now, an attempt of intervention and coup d'etat is being held in Venezuela, thought out and planned from Washington. If this happens, it will set a precedent in the entire region.
They are enduring an imperialist attack. They are enduring a new attempt of a coup d'etat at the hands of the empire and at the hands of the USA. For that reason, we came here.
We are demanding the withdrawal of the North American intervention on our continent. We demand that they withdraw because we want a Latin American continent of peace and democracy.
We do not want intervention in South America, and we want through this a free Venezuela. Venezuela decides, so I demand respect the countries and their idiosyncrasies. Here we continue marching towards the U.S. Embassy with repression.
We decided to come to the U.S. Embassy to ask that Venezuela be respected and to ask them for peace. We believe that, in the world today, it is not the time to beat the drums of war, because it is very dangerous. And the best way to express it, by all the political groups and social movements present, was to have a demonstration, to say to the Yankees that they please do not get involved, that what we want is peace.
The number of homeless people in Argentina's capital, Buenos Aires, has increased as the economic situation in the country worsens. More in this report.
Every day, the number of families sleeping on the streets multiplies as they have no resources to rent a house. This is just one of the most visible consequences of the economic crisis. 2 out of 10 residents in Buenos Aires are poor.
We need to analyze and take into account the political situation and the austerity measures launched by the government. They are affecting the most vulnerable people in Argentinian society.
No es un problema It's a question of political will. This government wants the rich to be richer and the poor to be poorer. This government wants to keep social differences. So the son of a poor worker will also be a poor worker, and the son of a rich businessman will also be a rich businessman.
The number of people living in misery went from 100,000 in 2015 to 188,000 in 2018. It is estimated that 23.6% of them became homeless in less than a year. Poverty reaches 639,000 people, 21% of the population in the richest area of the country.
The government is not sensitive at all. There have been people sleeping in front of the government buildings for some time now, but nobody cares. There are families with children, pets, with all their belongings that are homeless. You can see they are new poor because they live at the streets, but have their mobile phones.
While 10% of the population lives in extreme poverty, almost 2.5 million Argentinians have no access to basic food. The social gap keeps widening. The richest get 1/3 of the income, 31.8%, while the poorest just get 1.7%.
This leads to many premature deaths, pensioners who cannot get their medicines. And the worst part is the government talking about Venezuela instead of what's going on here. The mainstream media remain silent, as they are aligned to the financial power.
The hard situation poor people face is getting more visible in the city, where the social gap keeps increasing. The number of people living in poverty has sharply increased in the last year. The figures are clear: 30.5 million people in the country are poor.
Brazil's Minister of Justice has proposed a bill that would grant immunity to police officers for murdering suspects or criminals in cases of legitimate self-defense. Minister Sergio Moro presented the bill as a way to combat corruption, organized crime, and violent crime. But experts fear this measure would increase abuse of power among police officers. The bill also seeks to categorize illegal campaign financing as a criminal offense instead of just labeling as an electoral crime. And following the dam disaster in Brazil, health problems in the area may be on the rise. Increasing cases of dengue fever, yellow fever, infectious diseases, and even suicides are expected in the long run. According to the research institute Fiocruz, Brumadinho has become an endemic area for a number of diseases. Experts are also warning of the cost these health problems will bring.
We need to learn from what happened and think about strategies that combine public and private efforts. It is unacceptable the public health sector to bear the full burden of such a tragedy, and that the company that is responsible for it collects all the profits from the exploitation.
There is growing concern in Guatemala over the pollution of the river Lempa basin, which is leading to famine. Climate change and the contamination of the river is affecting residents in the area. They are no longer able to rely on the river for food sources. A community official says the emergency could soon reach famine levels.
We consider this an emergency. We're getting close to conditions of famine, or at least that's where we're heading. We're moving from minimum food conditions towards conditions of famine.
It didn't rain. The people who cultivated their piece of land lost their cornfields because it didn't rain and they were useless.
Around 1,700 migrants have arrived at the U.S.-Mexican border. The group arrived in the Mexican city of Piedras Negras, where the Eagle Pass border point is located. Migrants were temporarily based in a shelter, where medical care and tents set up for food to be provided. Dozens of people have celebrated the Chinese New Year in the streets of the Peruvian capital of Lima. The arrival of the Year of the Pig was celebrated with traditional Chinese music, performances, and dances. The Lunar New Year begins on Tuesday, February 5th. A number of Chinese citizens migrated to Peru after the Second World War, while Lima reportedly has the largest Chinese community of any Latin American city.
We are celebrating the Chinese New Year of the Pig. We are heralding in the opening of the new year at the Tongshen Temple here. We have lions here asking the dragon for permission to start its journey, to bring good omens to all businesses, all houses, and all people who want to receive us.
The 6th of February marks the birth of Cuban revolutionary and commander Camilo Cienfuegos. Born in Havana in 1932, Cienfuegos was one of the survivors of the Granma landing in 1956 and soon distinguished himself as a leader. He defeated Batista forces at the Battle of Yaguajay in December 1958. After the triumph of the revolution in 1959, he became the head of the Revolutionary Cuban Armed Forces. He disappeared during a nighttime flight in October 1959 and was presumed to have died. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur. Welcome back. Dozens of motorbikers in Lebanon took to the highways on Tuesday to ride in protest against Israel's continued violation of their country's sovereignty. Riding under the slogan "Towards Jerusalem" on millions of cross bikes, bikers, including supporters of Hezbollah, set off in a convoy in the south of the country. They rode along the border with Israel, showing their willingness to defend their homeland against any Israeli aggression. The United Kingdom government is set to resume flights deporting members of the Windrush generation to Jamaica. The government claims the individuals being deported committed serious crimes, but human rights activists and lawyers say the men are victims of the country's hostile immigration policies towards certain minorities. The Windrush generation refers to the immigrants who were invited to the UK between 1948 and 1971 from Caribbean countries such as Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and Barbados. The 12-year legal battle between a French farmer and agrochemical giant Monsanto has gone in its fourth round. Raul Francois is suing Monsanto for poisoning him through the inhalation of its Lasso weed killer. A lower court ruled in his favor, and Monsanto unsuccessfully tried to appeal the ruling. However, the company asked for a technical review of the case by the final court of appeal. Monsanto is facing lawsuits across the world after one of its weed killer was labeled as carcinogenic by the World Health Organization.
A clay pot can win against the iron pot, and a giant like Monsanto is not above the law. And this victory, because we never go back now on this victory, I dedicate it to all my colleagues, to all those who are sick, to all those who have died, because farmers have died from pesticides in France and elsewhere. And so it shows how much these companies, with a lot of arrogance, are able to market products that put us farmers and perhaps others in danger.
The governments of the Central African Republic and 14 armed groups have signed a new peace accord seeking an end to years of fighting. The accord was initiated by the Central African president and representatives of militias who control most of the country. The conflict with militants has left thousands of people dead. A quarter of the population of 4.5 million have fled their homes. Cities across China are staging light shows in celebration of the Spring Festival. This light exhibition is located at a lakeside park in Foshan City in Guangdong Province. It includes advanced lighting technology and water fountains, which tell a story about the past and culture of the district. This light show runs for another 3 weeks. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.